All righty. Welcome everyone to Prompt to Production, a little workshop that we put together. My name is Sergey. I'm a developer experience engineer here at Sentry, and with me is Steven. Do you want to do a little intro?
Hey, I'm Steven. I'm a product manager at Supabase, and I was previously a product manager at Sentry. So I've been looking to join up again and work with some of my old colleagues and tools.
How do we make this happen where you're kind
Yeah.
of there and there?
I invented some excuse to work with y'all again.
Perfect. For everyone that's joining, if you guys want to drop where you're calling in from in the chat, we also have a couple polls going just to get an idea of how are people building applications these days. I think the way these workshops typically used to run is it was more like a follow along, a code along, where we copied and pasted a lot of code. But as agents are starting to write a lot of the code by themselves, I think the meat and the value of these workshops is changing. How are you thinking about it, Stephen?
Yeah, that reads true. Like I never did a workshop that was a code along, but the truth is like most folks were probably always just watching and trying to figure it out later. And now it doesn't really make sense. It's about giving people the right tools and the way that we think about it and that they can apply it later.
Yep. And I'm seeing some votes coming in. So a lot of people are using Cursor or Claude Code. Some are using neither in comparison to AI building platforms like Lovable, Bolt, V0. I'm curious, are those the ones that are like hand coding and doing the artisan art of coding at this point?
Coding by yourself needs a special name now.
Absolutely, yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think I just want to do a quick overview. We don't have any slides. We have a demo application, but I thought it would be really cool to kind of go through both how to properly set up your Supabase environment, and not in the sense of like the table design or anything like that. It's more about how do you as a developer equip yourself with the right tools so that your agents can help you put out the best kind of code that they can, from the security, from the performance, from observability kind of perspectives, all those things. We as developers still need to understand at a very deep level, in my opinion, and there are tools available to do that, both from Supabase and from Sentry. We are going to take a look at kind of like how it all works together, and if there are errors that come up, what that could look like in Sentry, and couple of other, I guess, best practices of how do you make sure that when you are building applications that, I mean, Supabase's whole thing is build in a weekend, scale to millions. You want to make sure that those millions of users are still happy using the application when it is at that scale. And if something does go awry and something breaks, you as a developer need to make sure that you are aware of that. And what are some of the steps that we can go towards this idea of self-healing software? I know that term's been thrown around, but we at Sentry deeply care about that, and there are some things that we're working on that hopefully help all developers get a little bit closer to it without it being a slop factory of code that you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I would just add to that, as you'll start to show this application that we worked on together a bit, and yeah, like ultimately the application, like many, are vibe coded to some extent. But what we'll get into is that the way that we build this, whether it was the Next.js app itself, building React components, or it's adding the Sentry SDK, or it's setting it up to communicate with Supabase and designing those schemas, like I'd say that some of us maybe did study database design, but we forget these things. We make mistakes. So these skills are not just for people that have never done it before. It's also for people who want to make sure that they do it consistently right all the time. Like these are guardrails for you and for the agent. So that's a good thing to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am going to share my screen, and I hope Chrome allows me to do that. Y'all can hear it or see it, right? We're good?
Yep.
Perfect. So Stephen and I built the Postgres post, which is a newsletter platform that has kind of like a couple of the posts that were published in the past. You can filter them down here. If you take a look at oh, that's funny.
Perfect.
I didn't run it. And one of the perks of Next.js is that homepage was cached. But let's just give that a quick run. I'm gonna bump up my font here as well.
Doing a little Next.js promo live.
Yeah, right? Unintentionally. But as I was saying, you can take a look at an individual post. It has some comments. You can leave a comment. This is awesome. And you can subscribe. And they're going to be, I already subscribed with that email. And, I don't know, test@test.com, my favorite. ABC123. And that works. I also have it set up with different ways that you can query data from Supabase. And I don't know how much we need to go into this. This repo will
we
be
can do
open source.
it can be open source in the future if we want it to be, but I think we can just quickly say like what you're seeing here, like as we mentioned Next.js, what we're also going to see in a few seconds here, just to go ahead and like, you know, give the forethought for the folks in chat, that you're seeing the Next.js app and what it is using and what you're already giving a really cool insight, right? Like we talk about Supabase. What is Supabase? It's a open source platform for Postgres databases, and we host it for you ultimately in the cloud, but you don't have to deal with it, right? And we also provide auth and a lot of other features so that you can build and scale really quickly. But some of that stuff, like what you're showing, is that, yes, we provide our own SDKs for JavaScript, Python, on down the line, but we also, you can still use Drizzle, Prisma, whatever your favorite ORM is. And then to tie that in with what we're doing today, that while you'll see that Sentry is going to be able to trace that. So everything you just saw in the UI and you wonder, what did that look like, right? Is this a black box to you? Well, not for long, right? Sentry is going to show you that you started in Next.js, and it's actually going to go through some, you know, another feature conveniently in this demo, of course, is that we are using edge functions, which are also hosted on Supabase. So you can either go straight to your Postgres database via the REST API using the SDKs that we provide you, or directly to the database using Drizzle or Prisma. And you can also interact with edge functions where it makes sense. In this case, it was over-engineered, but over-engineering is good for a demo.
Exactly. I think the goal, or at least in my mind, was that there is no right answer. And sometimes agents will steer you into whatever direction they decide steering is right. But you should be covered and you should be okay. Like there isn't like a one way to do it properly. So if we go into the Supabase dashboard and like you try to connect this project, Supabase will give you onboarding for whether you want to use a framework, whether you want to do a direct connection with Postgres, or you want to use an ORM. So like all of these options are available, and you are okay to make a decision. It's just probably best to stick to one and not do what we did, which is provide 4 different ways to connect to it. But yeah.
So there is a wrong answer. The wrong answer is doing Frankenstein.
Absolutely. Also, by the way, if anyone has any questions at any point while we're chatting, feel free to drop them in the chat, and hopefully we'll get to them at some point. But yeah, so I have set up this project. What are some things that I should be looking at from the get-go, Stephen?
Right off, right? Like I encourage very often, it's something that I hope we make sure we get the point across today, is that many people more and more are not working through studios. I think studios by default need to be here. But if you are wondering, So meaning that you can do all of these things like creating tables, looking at your schema via the terminal. But if you want to go ahead and see like table editor, for example, you can get an overview of the tables. You can also already see some ominous looking red marks, which is something we might talk about later. But you can already see all the info here. These are all fake users, so you don't have to worry about anything sensitive. And then you can also, in that next line, go directly into an SQL editor on the left.
Right.
Yeah. So if you want to work directly in SQL and that's what you're comfortable with, you can do it here. And there's even a little AI assistant if you just want to try around, as many of us have forgotten how to write SQL in the last 2 years. The AI assistant can, of course, like help you generate it. But today, I think, and then of course there's auth. You can figure out how to get JOT tokens, like whatever you need to do to make your application secure. The edge functions, maybe you can show that. Oh yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. So you can really easily like copy paste that, put that in,
nice.
And then you can run the queries.
Yeah.
Edge functions, these are the edge functions that we've deployed. These were all deployed also via terminal, secrets and everything there. So it's very easy to navigate around and see everything you're working with. And then I think before we get to that other red dot on the left, which is your advisors, we can click on the little telescope, which is the observability section. So ultimately, we definitely provide observability out of the box. We want to make sure you can see things like query performance, very importantly. If you click there, you're going to be able to see insights into a lot of your queries and try to see which ones have been run the most often, which ones have the most time consumed, because obviously that should be where you do your optimization, right? If performance is a problem that you're trying to address. So we provide all these things here if you want to. Yeah.
Slow queries here. Nice. Yeah, and then I'm also seeing this index advisor. So are advisors kind of like this overarching concept within Supabase that helps me as a developer do things better?
If you're familiar with like Sentry issues, right? And that Sentry issues, like Sentry's famous for errors, obviously, and capturing them, and then you go into your issue feed. But you can also have their performance issues. I believe you can even have their replay issues these days, depending on how it's configured. So advisors are definitely something like a Sentry issue. We're going to surface performance errors, performance issues, security issues, and we're going to rank them as to how severe they are. So that's something we'll talk about, like around RLS policies. If they're just missing, this is something very severe, and we want you to address it, and we try to get that in front of you. In this case, what you saw in that, yeah, and you can access it there as well. In this case, what you saw was an index advisor. Isn't purely the same thing as an advisor, but this is a vocab confusion. But that allows you to configure extension for Postgres, so you can see where you can improve indexes to improve performance.
Nice.
And then maybe we can look at logs right below that telescope.
Yep.
Because that will be. And then here already you can see that you have again an SQL editor, and on the left you can see all the sources of logs, right? Which is also a pretty good insight to a lot of the different features that Supabase provides. If you want to run crons, edge functions, if you want to have storage like S3 bucket style storage, Pooler, Postgres, which is ultimately the API that we have sitting on top of Postgres to allow you to interact and run queries. This is where we're going to generate all those logs, and you can run queries to get insights to them. And one of the cool things today, of course, is that you can drain those logs into Sentry. If you want Sentry to be your single source of truth for errors, traces, and logs, you can do it. Yep. Which, go to this part of your UI in Supabase, and you can add a destination, and you essentially just put a DS in from Sentry.
And I guess for people that might be wondering, like, what would be a reason for this? From my perspective, Sentry at this point is all about gathering the right kind of context And so in the world of software, leaning towards like being more developed with agents, we as developers might not keep track of everything that's going on, but agents are really good at doing that as long as they're given the right context. And all that context lives within a lot of these logs. So with Sentry, you get traces and spans of like all the operations that are happening within your application. But if there are two separate frameworks that are communicating with each other, having all of that information in one place just gives your agents, again, additional context that helps you for your debugging journey. Instead of having to go to like 13 different services to figure out what went wrong, all that data is available in one place.
And I think it's again like a powerful, as much as I can sit and tell you all the great things that Supabase gives you out of the box. Like if you want to develop with a Postgres backend, we want you to have all these nice things that you can build with around it. But one of those things that ultimately we cannot do, like we can give you logs, we create those logs for you, right? That's ultimately part of our product offering, to give you these value insights, these telemetry, but we're not going to be able to trace across your whole stack, right? So if you want to have that insight starting at your Next.js application, or imagine you have some massive system of microservices, we ultimately can't trace all of that going back to the Supabase, Postgres. And that's where you need something like Sentry. And then if you can take our logs and put them into your system, then you do have that single source of truth. And that's very powerful, whether it's you or your agent or both of you.
Nice. And I think what we can start doing now is, I mean, we have these advisories here, which are RLS is disabled. I think it would be cool to go back to the code and let's just spin up Claude Code and talk about kind of like the best practices of setting up your coding agent for success. And so the things that I have set up are within the MCPs. I have both the Sentry MCP set up via the Claude plugin, and I also have the Supabase one. Wonder why it says I need authentication. Let's try and authenticate that real quick.
Should be able to take care of it in the UI.
Yeah. I was testing with this and I was authenticated earlier, so cool. So yep. So now if we go back to MCP, so Supabase is connected and Sentry is connected. So those are, I mean, at a high level, are going to be really, really important for your agents to be able to gather real-time data and information about the projects, as opposed to just kind of like having the LLM put together some things based on the training data that it has. The other things that are important, I think now more than ever, are skills. And so if we go to the project, so I have the project open here locally. Let me just open this up a little bit. And I'm sure everyone is familiar with these different dot files. So for Claude Code, you'll have dot Claude. For agents like Cursor and other ones, you'll have dot agents. And this is where we have a couple of skills. And again, we wanted to prompt this project specifically to production as much as we could. And so some of the skills that are here are Next.js related. So making sure that you have Next.js best practices. Supabase, one thing that I was looking at here and that caught my attention is, let's see, Supabase changes frequently. Verify against current docs before implementing. And I think like having that kind of information is super, super important, because like with Sentry, our SDK has been around for the past 12 years. And a lot of training data is using previous versions of the SDK. And so if you don't have the MCP server or the docs in the context of your agent, and you just tell it to instrument Sentry in your project, it will come up with ways to do it. And they probably won't be the like current best practices for it. So I strongly encourage people when they're like, okay, if Claude Code tells me I need to add Sentry to my project, don't just respond, be like, all right, do it yourself. It's like, go to the docs, find the SDK that you're looking for, and it will have a prompt that you can just copy and give it back to Claude, but it'll have the right steering to be able to do it successfully. Do you find similar things with Supabase as well?
I saw even the other day on Twitter someone from Sentry complaining, like trying to convince, right? Sentry is famously error monitoring, but you've been doing performance monitoring, meaning proper tracing, for like 6 years now or something. And the number of times that you'll talk to using Claude, talking to any model, or Cursor talking to any model, say, hey, help me set up Sentry, like what else should I do? And they'll say, well, Sentry is for errors. No. That seems like a very out-of-date information these days. So it's pretty funny. And it's exactly the point. Like, skills are there to help guide these models to make the right decisions and get the most up-to-date information.
And so now that we have the MCPs set up and a couple of the skills, one thing that I do want to mention real quick is we at Sentry are working on this new CLI that is also proving to be challenging sometimes, because Sentry has had a CLI historically, but this one here is optimized for agents. And so if you go to the docs, there is like even an agentic usage resource. And skills and MCPs are a topic that I think we can spend a whole other 3 hours talking about. Which one is better, which one is worse, why use which one. We have both, and Supabase also has both. And I think it's, again, a matter of meeting developers where they are, and whatever needs they have, chances are they will be solved with either an MCP or a skill or both. But the reason I bring up this CLI is because it has an init command that goes through your project and figures out kind of like the most optimal Sentry configuration for the specific project that you have. So if it's a Next.js project, it detects it. If it has a Supabase folder inside of your project, it also understands that needs its own configuration, because Supabase, more importantly, the edge functions run in a different runtime. They run in Dino, whereas Next.js runs in Node and browser and is hosted in a whole separate place. So if your agents don't have that context, they might not be able to properly set up your projects, where you might have everything under one project in Sentry. But the best practices would be having a project for your Next.js application, a project for your Dino application, and then if you have your logs draining to Sentry, have that as a separate project as well. That way, everything is kind of compartmentalized. I can never say that word, in the right places, but it also kind of like feeds into each other, and AI agents have a better understanding of like, okay, if this error came from Next.js, chances are I don't even need to look at the Supabase edge functions to figure out what caused it, unless a trace propagates all the way down to it and it's a part of it, and then I can kind of like get that context that I need at that time.
I'll just say about this CLI as someone who has set up Sentry from my times at Sentry, probably literally hundreds of times in different applications, this CLI it's great. I really was happy to see this when I was practicing for this webinar.
Nice. Yeah, that's always good to hear. And if anybody's using it and has some feedback for it, there is a /feedback command on it, I think. And I know the CLI team, and they read all of it. So please do try it out and see how it goes. I'm actually going to showcase it live, see how it works with a dashboard creation process, but we'll get there. Yeah, and I think now is a good time to kind of dive into Sentry a little bit and walk through some of the things that you would be seeing. So I have selected my 3 projects here: Sentry Supabase Edge, Sentry Supabase Workshop, and Sentry Supabase Log Drain. So this is an issue feed. This is where you will see things start coming in, whether they're handled or unhandled errors, or you're using the Sentry capture exception API. All of those things will start showing up here by default, but then you also see some performance errors like this n+1 query, which actually gets automatically extrapolated from the data that gets sent to Sentry. And we'll take a look at an example of a trace that caused one of these errors. But this is all like,
I think that example is also proof positive around using, I believe you're using the Drizzle ORM there.
yes.
So if you are using traditional ORMs to communicate and you want to be able to easily switch back and forth from different Postgres providers, then it's always going to be Drizzle, and then Sentry would always be able to detect these kinds of problems. Sentry would be very agnostic.
Yeah, I think we need to be a little bit more clear on our docs about that as well, because I've heard that question over and over, where like, what does it mean to be auto instrumented? Because, for example, if we go to the let's go to the server, sentry.server.config. So this is a Next.js instrumentation file for our project. And you can see here, we're actually creating a Supabase client that then gets passed off to the Supabase integration for Sentry. And again, some of this stuff sometimes will come up as part of the Sentry init CLI process, but we're still working on making sure that we are identifying all the right integrations that just add that additional context and that auto instrumentation for packages that do emit telemetry. It's just, if you don't have it enabled, you might be missing out on some important information. So I strongly encourage anyone using Claude Code or anyone that's doing Sentry implementations, just we have on our docs site an integration section. So again, you can just copy that URL, pass it off to Claude Code, and be like, look at my package.json, see all the packages that I'm using, see if there is a Sentry integration available for it. Chances are there probably will be, and it'll give your agents additional context and your Sentry additional telemetry that is important.
I know how to add the integration like from the top of my head, and I still got the agent to do it. So
yeah, and so this is kind of the issue feed. If we look at one of the errors that comes in, you will see a breakdown of which browser it happened in, what release it happened on, what was the URL, what environment it was in. You'll get the stack trace from your source maps that get uploaded to Sentry. You'll also get a session replay that's like a video like reproduction of all of the things the user did before hitting that error, which is super, super neat. And again, I think we're starting to use replay context as context in the MCP server. So if you are using the MCP, you can just be like, hey, take the URL of the issue. Let's go back to Claude and be like, can you help me solve? And this should be able to get the details from Sentry using the Sentry MCP. And yeah, and we're going to leave that there running. You'll get associated logs. And as you can see, this is a Next.js error, but there are logs that were associated with it from the edge functions. So you'll see all of that show up here. And more importantly, if we view the full trace, something that started at the demos page load, we try to hit the protected API endpoint, which hit the API edge processor in Next.js, which then ended up hitting the Dino hello world edge function. And so this is that kind of distributed tracing view that we alluded to earlier. But we'll find a more interesting example here. But again, this is what a span looks like. So this operation only took 1 millisecond, which is great. No performance issues there, but for some, this timeout was actually 10 seconds. And so when you do get to a point of, okay, errors are kind of taken care of, now we can optimize the performance of it, you can, again, take this trace, send it to Claude Code and be like, hey, are there any opportunities for me to improve this? Alternatively, something that we actually launched this week is this Seer agent that's in beta, that's available for all of the Sentry users. And it is one of those things where you can come in and it gives you some options for what to do right away. So which of my open issues are getting worse, not better? What are my slowest DB queries? So that's probably related to what we're doing here with Supabase. And Seer is kind of our in-house AI debugger. It has all of the context of all of your previous issues, all of your traces, logs, session replays. And without leaving the dashboard, you kind of, or without having to get a master's in understanding what a dashboard actually does, you can start asking plain, silly questions that I usually like to ask. And you can get insights very effectively. You can see it like finds all the queries and you can keep prompting it afterwards. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? I think I saw one. How can we manage the problems and fix using AI if it exists? And is there any chance you would add an instantaneous test of the project?
In this case, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think how to manage the problems and fix using AI if it exists, and if there's any chance you would add an instantaneous. I don't know if this is a reference to the test of the project in Supabase or the project in Sentry. But very often in the case of Sentry, like for Next.js, it's part of the wizard flow. And I think the new CLI will even do this. It'll add a test page where you can generate an error immediately to ensure that it works. So this should be there. And I think it's even best practices of Sentry.
Yeah, I think the Mohammed might be asking more about like, if an error happens, how do we let AI automatically fix it? Unless I'm not understanding it correctly. But to that point, I do have an answer, because Seer agent is kind of like our interface to talk to it, but Seer also exists as a standalone product where every single issue will have a Seer autofix here. And so this one, you can start doing a root cause analysis and it will try to figure out what happened. And at the end of it, it'll actually prompt you to send it off to a Cursor background agent or a Claude Code background agent. And you can configure Seer to run automatically on any new issue coming into Sentry. You can define the step that you want Seer to go to. So whether it's just root cause analysis or an actual PR with a fix. And essentially, anytime a new error comes in, Seer will try to figure out how to fix it. And you can probably give it additional context for like anytime it fixes something, also make sure that the tests that were there that haven't caught it get updated, or if there weren't any tests previously for it, add new tests for it. And so it kind of like, again, goes towards that self-healing software where you as a developer don't even need to lift a finger. You kind of like deploy the application, let users hit those errors, and then Sentry will figure out how to fix it for you. And one thing Steve and I were discussing around those security policies that Supabase has, it would be interesting, and I haven't done it myself, and maybe I will at some point, but because those are exposed through the MCP interface. So if I go to Claude Code, like, can you check for all the security advisories inside my Supabase project?
You read my mind. This is what I was going to suggest.
Yeah, and so again, without having to go to the Supabase dashboard, we can get context and insights from Supabase about what it knows best, which is security best practices for your backend as a service. And some of the stuff might not end up in Sentry because this is not directly an error. But what you could probably do is set up like an automation that runs every single day at the end of the day. And all it does is it fetches the advisories from Supabase. And if you want to try to fix them right away, that's one way to do it. If you want then to create Sentry issues from those advisories as like actual errors that are part of your application, use the Sentry MCP to then create an issue for every single one of these advisories. And then you have, again, additional context of how to improve your application.
I think this is another perfect example of what we were talking about before, or what Sergey and I have been talking about building up this webinar is that Supabase, yes, allows users to scale very quickly to very many users, whatever use case that you have. It's very easy to build there, but a lot of the same problems are there that have always been there. It's just easier to do it with AI. But we are also at the same time trying to provide tools like MCP, these advisors, CLI, API, like just evolving on this space, like going where you go. If you build with AI and agents, we want you to have the tools where you can fetch these advisors and tell you how you can maybe go back and make things a little bit more secure, make things a little bit more performant. And then at the same time, partner with folks like Sentry. So if you do want, exactly like Sergey said, to fix it automatically, or have an agent fix it automatically, however it is, or you want to put it into Sentry, because I'm fairly certain you could exactly just then create an issue in Sentry. An agent can do it for you as well. And then you can go through that normal workflow that you're very used to, which is going in and logging into Sentry every day, seeing if anything is going to ruin your day, and then hopefully let Sentry fix it or help you fix it to repair your day. But all these things are there to exactly make it easier and us to try to help guide you through. And again, we have exactly skills around RLS policies and even skills around creating performant RLS policies. Yes, exactly. And these are fairly new, but it's definitely something we're trying to continuously improve upon.
Nice. I think there's a question that I'm actually also curious about from Bruno, which is it possible to select the log level that I want to send to Sentry from Supabase? So this is around the...
No, today it's all or nothing. Today it is really specifically a log drain that is for a specific project in Supabase that will go to a specific project in Sentry, and it will include all the logs. Can you explain? Nice. And then there's another question from Eric. Can you explain the visibility and management of self-healing mechanisms? Is it acting on repo? Oh, this is maybe a question for Seer, actually.
Yeah. So the way that this would work with Seer Autofix is, yes, absolutely. So every single project within Sentry, so let's take a look at this Next.js project. When you're configuring it with Seer, you actually connect a repository to the project, and you can have multiple repositories connected to the same project. And then this is where you decide which coding agent you want to hand off it to if you do actually wanted to create a draft PR. And so this goes to that process of new error comes into Sentry. Let's actually see if we can generate a new error and see if Seer will try to do that live as part of this workshop. Love doing live demos because they always work great.
I've seen Seer work very well enough times that I'm fairly confident.
But also to answer Bruno's question as well, like you probably, for now you can't set the log level of the logs coming in from Supabase, but in Sentry, if you're getting all of them, I believe this will have a level on it. Or are they all just showing up as service name, log player,
I think you have
severity info? Yeah. severity info. So maybe we can filter out severity does not contain info. And now we're getting all of the warnings. And I guess making sure that, like, if we just want to focus on the logs from the drain, that would be just selecting the different kind of project selector here. Yeah. And so the one thing that I think I wanted to still mention is if we go back to the Trace Explorer and we look at, well, actually, let's do this live. This was 34 minutes ago. Go back to our application. Let's go to a demo. And let's query, let's trigger an n+1 query. And let's do an unhandled error. And let's also, no, I think I've already done this, where if I subscribe with my personal one, because I already subscribed in the past, it'll just error out. But let's take a look at it in Sentry. Oh, and now you're seeing it in dark mode. Yeah, 36 seconds ago. So we're starting to see database operations come in. And if we take a look at one of these, oh, this was already picked up actually as an n+1. So from a page load on demos, oh, this was I think we had two different examples. There was one example where it is self-contained to the Next.js application, and that's why it's it all has the Next.js icon for it. But if we go back to the app, go to demos, and go to edge functions, we have an edge n+1. And we'll see that soon. And so again,
I think this is working better live than when I did it at home.
I tried it a few times this morning, so I wanted to make sure that it works
Okay, that's good.
as good as it should. But the idea is, like, agents will, again, whether or not this was like fabricated by us to be like, hey, make sure there's n+1 queries here. I've seen agents just go out and create these kinds of things. And at some point, you might not be realizing that that's happening because you're testing it locally, your database is locally, everything is loading super, super fast, and you kind of forget about it and you let go. And then I was actually listening to syntax.fm episode recently, and they were talking about how they forgot an index on one of their rows. And when they only had 40 shows, it had no problem kind of traversing all of the records and doing the searching as it would. And then they grew to 200 and 400. And then you end up with a search query that takes 10 seconds to load because you forgot an index somewhere. And so Sentry is there for those specific reasons, where if it starts to notice that you are following bad practices when you're querying your database or not, or things are being slow, it'll automatically alert you. So we should see an n+1 that was last seen 3 minutes ago. And now I believe because it's not a net new error, that's why the autofix didn't kick in right away, because I enabled it after this error had already been inside Sentry. And so autofix will now just like automatically start going through all of your existing issues. What I do sometimes is I'll just resolve all of them or delete all of them, and then it ends up being a new issue, and then autofix will start working. But you can see here,
I don't recommend you do that at your necessarily at your job if you're working.
Yes.
a big corporation. Don't just like close all errors. It's like, oh, job done.
I mean, the errors that are still there will come back, and the errors that are not there anymore maybe fix themselves. You never know. I'm kidding. Please don't archive your errors. what I wanted to also showcase is like Sentry, we looked at these two parts where you have your issue feed and you have your automatic issues. Tracing is kind of like explore is where you explore all the different content that you have within Sentry, like logs, traces, replays, and all that. We do have dashboards, and more specifically, we have pre-built ones that we have for things like backend overview. And so if we take a look at just the Sentry Supabase edge, and let's do this one, and Sentry Supabase, and this one. You can see we kind of pre-configure dashboard with different transactions. We show you, so similar to how Supabase had their observability, we do this for both your backend, your front end, your queries. And so we have one that's specific to Next.js. So, it's next.js. And so if we go to Sentry Supabase, it'll have like, because Next.js is a full stack framework, it'll have things from the front end, like your web vitals, but then it'll also have your API latency and slow server-side rendered and client transactions and server transactions, so that you can get a better sense of how your application is performing. But the one thing that I wanted to showcase is like, yes, we pre-built these for our users, and these don't count towards your dashboard quota at all. These are kind of out of the box. If you did want to configure it and add things to it or remove, you would have to go ahead and duplicate it and then update it, and then that starts counting towards your quota. But back to the CLI that we had, like, I might not be an expert in understanding what kind of things I should be looking for in an application at all given moments. Like maybe some things I just forgot about. And that's what we have agents for. And the new CLI has a dashboards command. And if we, can you take a look at this application, use the Sentry CLI skill to come up with a dashboard that would give me good insights into the performance of this application. Keep it very vague on purpose, just to see how it ends up doing something like this. But loaded the skill.
I'm very curious to see. This would also be like a very exciting thing for the new Sentry CLI, right? It used to require quite a lot of understanding and expertise to be able to think through. I want to have, especially with something like Next.js, right? Like Next.js again gives you the ability to do a lot of front end stuff, a lot of back end stuff, communicating with database, all in one application. And then, so what does a dashboard for that look like? What all data do you want to see in one place?
And I know we're coming up on time here, but I think the last thing that I wanted to cover is this concept of monitors, because Sentry will alert you on things that are coming into your issue feed when it is an actual error. You can configure those alerts through here. And again, you can set up notifications to go to your email, your Slack, wherever you prefer to receive those emails. You can configure the severity. So like if it's critical errors, then send it to all of my channels. If it's just a warning, then send it to Slack. But for things that aren't necessarily errors, we had a question in the chat about logs. It's like, if I start seeing logs coming in from, let's say, the Supabase drain that I want to monitor, so like connection received, I think that's, let's try to do this live. So I'm going to select the log drain, and I'm going to say that the message contains connection received. Okay. And so this is kind of like a healthy thing that you want to keep seeing, because this means that things keep pinging your database and you're getting things from it. We can save this as a monitor for the count. And every single hour, if it goes below 10, I want to receive an issue for it. And I'm going to assign it to myself. And connections are being dropped. Yep. So if there's less than 10 connection logs in my Sentry, I want to be notified about it. Doesn't mean that it's something broke, but it's just something that I want to be able to get alerted on. And so once you create this monitor, or you can create a new alert for it as well, an issue is created, and yes, if the event is, I believe this is an alert associated with this specific issue. So I can just leave this like this. And every single time this error happens, I want to get notified via an email. Sentry.io. Select an action. Notify unpreferred channels. Active members. Okay. So now this alert is set up on this monitor, and at some point it will drop, and I will probably get an issue about it. So I think this is a really good way to extend your observability and monitoring beyond what kind of is given to you out of the box. You have to know these things exist, and part of the reason why we're doing these workshops is to kind of like showcase some of these features, because sometimes we forget to look around things when we're too busy prompting our agents and forgetting about things. But these things exist. I don't know if monitors are part of the CLI yet or not, but again, it's like one of those things that an agent should be able to do, given the context that it has about your previous issues in Sentry, all the data that's coming in, and kind of best practices from Supabase and Sentry and all these other places of like, how do I instrument my observability so that things don't fall through the cracks?
And I was even just checking. It seems that, in case anyone is wondering, like I was, that you can do this via Sentry CLI as well.
No.
So it provides you, or there's exactly skills about creating alerts and sending them to Slack.
Huh.
It's under, I misspoke. I meant the agent skills.
Oh, okay. So under docs and AI, agent skills, alerts.
Because it's ultimately a really important thing that if you use a platform like Supabase or many others, that alerts are maybe not native to those platforms, and you probably have workflows that are already built into your organization. So you have alerts that go into certain Slack channels or whatever it might be, MS Teams, and Sentry has those built in already. And so you maybe want to fetch logs, advisors, whatever it might be out of a platform like Supabase, and then you can take advantage of this existing workflow, again, to make sure that you're having that operational maturity.
Okay. So it looks like it actually, let's take a look. Where did I ask it to create a dashboard? Okay, it was going through a lot and was going back and forth and trying to figure out how to do it. Oh, okay, let's first understand the key routes. build the dashboard. So it looked at some traces, it looked at active transactions, and then it went ahead and after all of that, build something. And let's take a look at that. Go back to our dashboards, Postgres post performance. Okay, we have total requests, P95 latency, how many errors, response time mapped to P95 and P50, although I'm seeing P95 as the title, but it actually is using P50 for span duration. So if we go and edit this widget, I'm sure, oh, no, it is doing the right thing. It's visualizing.
Yeah, I think you have both there. Maybe the labels are confusing or something.
Yeah, I will have to get back to the team about that. Throughput, errors, database queries, slowest endpoints. So it actually did a pretty good job above doing all of this stuff. And again, something that like we were setting up an alert on the count. You can do something similar on the response time. So if the average response time for the HTTP server span operation inside the Supabase workshop goes beyond a certain threshold, or you can set it to dynamic. And this is going to be Sentry and our machine learning algorithm figuring out what like an anomaly detection looks like. And if it falls out of the regular cadence, it will dynamically create that alert and notify you. Again, if you don't know the specific thresholds that you want to match against, might be worth setting it up dynamically first, seeing what kind of alerting you get, and then fine-tuning it further with specific values if you find that like it is too noisy or it's not noisy enough. So yeah, I'll stop there. I think that was pretty well covered. Did I miss anything?
I think you've covered a lot in 1 hour. We can see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, and again, thank you so much for hanging out and giving your perspective. Do we want to?
Thanks for having me. Yes,
Okay.
please go out and play with these things in your own time. And you can find us very easily in GitHub, but I know Sentry and Supabase Discord. So come talk to us. Let us know if you think they should be better.
Yep. And as Alex mentioned there in the chat, I think there's going to be a poll, a survey that gets presented to you after the stream ends. So if you don't mind filling that out, that would be great. Yeah, thank you all for hanging out. Thanks for the questions. I really, really appreciate it. And we will catch you in the next one.